Everybody, I'm in Richmond Hill, Georgia right now at Fort McAllister State Historic Site. It is our last state park that we're doing on Mom's park passport that she's had. So we're gonna do the best we can here. It is hot, so we're gonna see what we can see and then we'll go home. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Mom's already gave up and she's on the air conditioning in the building. So let's go. OGC River, something like that. OGC.
Destination is on your right, Fort McAllister State Park.
This is destruction of the CSS Nashville. The swift Confederate blockade runner Nashville, renamed Rattlesnake, was destroyed by the Monitor Montauk February 28, 1863, after she went aground on a sandbar in a hairpin bend of the OGC River. The engagement was a three-way battle with the guns of the fort firing on the Montauk and the Montauk concentrating on the Nashville. The wreck of the Nashville lies in the direction of the arrow, approximately 1,200 yards. So it would be out there. And it says this right here is machinery from the CSS Nashville. These portions of rotating machinery were removed 1960 from the wreck of the Confederate blockade runner Nashville, sunk in the OGC River by shell fire from the USS Montauk in February 1863. These relics give some conception of the power of the Nashville engine. These things are massive and very, very large. So it says CSS Nashville, built by William Collar in New York City. She was ordered by New York merchants and launched September 22nd, 1853. Her maiden voyage was from New York to Charleston, South Carolina, under the name United States Mail Steamship Nashville, with a cargo of mail and its passengers. The bottom of the vessel was sheathed in copper in 1854 to prevent marine growth. She was overhauled in 1859 and received new boilers in June 1860. The Nashville entered Charleston Harbor April 12, 1861, as the Civil War began. She was purchased by the newly formed Confederate States Navy for $100,000. That was a lot of money. She was the first vessel commissioned by the Confederate States government and the first to fly a Confederate flag in England. She entered Southampton, England, November 21st, 1861, after capturing and burning the Union ship Harvey Birch. The CSS Nashville, renamed the Private Rattlesnake, came to an end a blockade running on February 28, 1863, trapped in the OGC by a sandbar at low tide. The guns of Fort McAllister could not protect her, and within an hour, the Union ironclad Montauk had sunk the Confederate vessel. This is how it looks. So since it's too hot to eat at a picnic table, we're going to picnic in the car. So we got chicken salad sandwich. So this is our final Georgia State Park we're going to be using with Mom's pass from last year. It expires in a few days, so hope this is a good one. This right here talks about the Wallies. It says, no matter how hard they tried, Union ships could not sail upriver past Fort McAllister to destroy vital Confederate railroad bridges and plantations. Oh, there's supposed to pull out. I ain't worried about it. And it says, although it was a small fort with comparatively few men and guns, Fort McAllister played a huge key role in both Confederate and Union strategies for naval warfare. It's like old disc. Mm-hmm. I'll just die if I saw a snake that big. It says the Anaconda Plan.
Them some old bottles.
Look at all the barnacles on it.
Them right there. Jane and them tried to get all the ones they could.
Yeah. And now they're in museums.
Huh?
And now they're in museums.
Yeah.
It says, life aboard a naval ship. Sailors in the mid-19th century faced miserable living conditions on board. Only officers had cabins. The rest of the crew lived below deck in cramped quarters that were often dark and dank and infested with vermin. Many sailors believed that it was bad luck to bathe while at sea, so the areas below deck were undoubtedly foul-smelling. Beds were often hammocks, although bunks were sometimes available. During good weather, many chose to sleep on deck to avoid the unpleasant conditions below. I wouldn't even want to know how that smelled, because right now people don't take showers every day. Oh my God, the scent will knock you down. Ooh. Let's have some reenactments here. That's some old-timey looking clothes. Can you see them?
That's in a period of time. Time very still.
And that says that was the last voyage, destruction of the Nashville. And that was Montauk right there. That back there will be whenever it was blowing up the Nashville. That was a pretty boat. And then right there talked about the Anaconda Plan. It was Scott's Great Snake. And it says life on an ironclad right there. And it says nothing remains of her. Ships that could sneak through the Union blockade of the southern coastline to bring in supplies were extremely valuable to the Confederacy. And that was Major John B. Galley, Commanding Officer, Fort McAllister. That says garrison life was hard. Life in this coastal semi-underground fort was difficult even without the threat of Union attacks.
Fort McAllister, September 24, 1862. The change of location had not been a healthy one for the Blues. The expansive rice fields in the area in the late summer heat bred large numbers of mosquitoes, and with them came malaria and yellow fever. Through the month of October, the Blues averaged about 50% sick. Fort McAllister, August 26, 1862. I don't like to get sick down here as we have no doctor yet. The Yankees done a great deal of signalizing.
It says Fort McAllister reborn. In early 1865, the Union troops who had captured Fort McAllister left the Georgia coast and marched northward to South Carolina. The once powerful earthen fort, its cannon gone and many of its wooden structures burned, stood empty and unused for years. In 1925, American Henry Ford, the man who first mass-produced the automobile, began buying land on the Georgia coast. About the 75,000 acres Ford acquired south of the Savannah were the overgrown parapets and bombardment shelters at Fort McAllister. When Ford suffered a stroke in 1945, most of his Richmond holdings were sold. The International Paper Board bought the Fort McAllister acreage in 1947 and eventually deeded it to the state of Georgia. In 1964, 100 years after the last fateful battle, the fully restored Fort McAllister State Historic Park opened to the public. Today, thousands of people visit Fort McAllister to learn about its unique history and explore one of the nation's few remaining earthenwork fortifications.
The Civil War began on April 12, 1861, with the bombardment of Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. Within days, President Lincoln ordered the blockade of all southern ports. Although the war would be largely fought on land, the survival of the South depended on the seas. Because the South had little manufacturing capacity, it needed
Got a lot of squirrels out there.
materials and industry. Savannah, the largest city and port in Georgia, was crucial to the Southern cause, and a line of defensive fortifications was quickly planned for the city. Stout masonry forts like Pulaski and Jackson protected the main shipping channels, but Savannah was still vulnerable to attack from the maze of waterways that surrounded it. None was more important than the deep water of the Ogeechee River, which, if left unprotected, could bring Union troops to within 12 miles of Savannah. Coming up from Ossabaw Sound, the first high ground along the Ogeechee is a bluff opposite a hairpin turn called Genesis Point. Formerly a Wally Indian site, it was now part of the rice plantation, Scrappy Hall, owned by fourth-generation planter Joseph L. McAllister. Although his great-grandfather had been a Revolutionary War hero, like most Southerners, Joseph McAllister cast his lot with his state.
Three candidates.
So this is stop number 1. It says Genesis Point. You are now approaching Genesis Point, a bluff on the Ogeechee River. That's how they pronounce it in there, so that's how it's pronounced, Ogeechee. It says sinking of the CSS Nashville Rattlesnake. In July 1862, the CSS Nashville Captain Baker ran the Union blockade and entered Savannah via Wilmington River with a cargo of arms loaded with cotton from Europe. She attempted to escape via Ossabaw Sound. Thwarted by the vigilance of the blockade squadron, she was withdrawn up the great Ogeechee River and refitted as a raider. Renamed Rattlesnake, her silhouette was lowered and she received heavier guns. In February 1863, ready for sea, she dropped down river to Fort McAllister to plan her escape. On the 27th, She was forced to retire upstream upon the approach of the Armored Monitor Montauk Commander J.L. Worden, USN, and ran aground in the 7-mile reach, a short distance above the fort. Early on the 28th, Montauk anchored near the fort and within 1,200 yards of Nashville Rattlesnake. She opened fire with 11 and 15-inch guns while her escort shelled the fort. Fires broke out and shortly Nashville was aflame fore and aft. At 9:20, her pivot gun burst. At 9:40, her funnel went by the board, and at 9:55, her magazine exploded, shattering her into smoking ruins. Although undamaged by direct hits from the fort's guns, Montauk struck a torpedo while dropping downriver, which blew a hole in her bottom. She was beached in the mud for repairs. Number 2 is a signal tower. U.S. troops constructed a tower like this one shortly after the capture of Fort McAllister to use as a signal flag station. Pretty interesting right there. It almost looks like something off a railroad track. So we should have a number 3 somewhere. So number 3 was the Greenway, and it once held rows of tents which served as the primary sleeping quarters for lower ranked enlisted men. Men garrisoned at Fort McAllister only slept inside the earthen walls of the fort in the rare situation of imminent naval assault. So number 3 is over there where that tree's at. Number 4 was NCO huts. These huts stimulate quarters for non-commissioned officers. Each of the original 16 NCO huts had 4 bunk straw beds and a stovepipe oven. There's number 3, so that's where the tents would have been at. Bunk beds, a stove. It's pretty much got the same setup. That one would have held somebody extra. So over there is number 5. And that would have been the barracks, a reproduction of a similar building that stood here. The barracks mimics the style of the many coastal plantation houses and housed officers as well as the commander of the fort. However, the original structure was wooden and oversaw operations for this portion of the rice plantation before the war. Well, this is number 6. It's a blacksmith. While there was no original blacksmith at the fort, this structure shows tools that soldiers relied on. So number 7 is a bridge. Because the moat surrounding the fort was high elevation and never held water, the Confederates reinforced it with palisades or spikes to slow a land attack. Oh. Number 8 is the parade ground, and it says These grounds were the center of activity when the fort was not under fire, but during attacks, this open area could be a dangerous place. And this says, Captain John McCready, designer of Fort McAllister, Charlestonian, a student of Agassiz at Harvard, then professor of mathematics at the College of Charleston. He resigned his position at the outbreak of the war and became an officer in the Confederate engineers. Transferred to Savannah, he spent his efforts surrounding that city with an extensive ring of defenses. The rest of his life was an academic. He returned to his old professorship in Charleston, later becoming assistant to Agassiz, then professor of zoology at Harvard, and finally professor of biology at the University of the South, Sewanee, Tennessee. Okay, number 9, hot shot gun. This 32-pounder gun was designed to fire heated cannonballs at wooden ships and set them ablaze, turning it into a very effective weapon. This gun is a smooth bore and fired 32-pound shot. Oh, that's pretty. It's too hot to even think about going in that thing today. I don't know if you could though. So number 10 is hot shot furnace. Solid iron cannonballs were heated within this furnace until they were red hot. Using metal tongs, cannon crew members transferred the heated cannonballs through the tunnel located between the furnace and the cannon. And that sign says hot shot furnace. The hot shot oven was used to heat cannonballs red hot to set fire to attacking wooden vessels. If you ever need to feel small, just get up beside some big dirt things. I need to go back to number 11 because number 12 is up there. So let me go back over here. So number 11 is central bomb-proof. This structure was used as a hospital and supply area, and most men admitted were either stricken with malaria or suffered burns from operating cannons. Officers slept inside in the event of an imminent naval assault. Oh, Lord. It's hot as all get out up in here. Oh, we got beds. That's kind of creepy. I know they wouldn't have had electricity then, but you know. Wow. And that goes all the way down. So this says Tomcat, Garrison mascot. The sole Confederate fatality after 7 hours of intensive bombardment on March 3rd, 1863 by the monitors. Pasek, Captain Purvisol Drayton, Nanhat, and Patapscot, supported by the Montauk, the Wissa-Hickson, the Seneca, the Dawn, the Flambeau, the Serbabo, the C.P. Williams, the Norfolk Packet, and the Para was the garrison mascot. The death of the cat was deeply regretted by the men, and news of the fatality was communicated to General Beauregard in the official report of the action. So now we're going up. That was 10-inch Columbine magazine. So whenever y'all watch this video, if y'all remember the heat wave we had in June, that's when this was filmed. Oh, that's pretty. That says Major John B. Galley, killed in action while commanding the fort during the second attack of the Monitor Montauk, February 1st, 1863. The 32-pounder beside which he was standing was struck while Galley was going from gun to gun, encouraging his men to calmness of aim. That's the Coast Guard, well, not Coast, but a survey marker. So number 12 was parapet. On this outer edge of the fort's earthen wall, one of the guns was struck by a shell fired from a Union vessel and exploded. A large metal plate from the gun struck the fort's first commander, Major John B. Galley, who was killed instantly and replaced by Major George W. Anderson. So that happened right here. So this right here says, that might be Chevis. We got a road in Florence like that. Rice mill. From the roof of Chevis rice mill 2.5 miles across the Ogeechee in the direction of the Arrow, General Sherman and his staff watched the reduction of Fort McAllister sunset December 13th, 1864. This says damage from naval bombardments. The largest naval guns were used against land fortifications were fired on Fort McAllister in 1863 from Monitor-type Union ironclads. 15-inch shells penetrated 17 feet of sand, digging craters 8 feet in diameter and 7 feet deep on exploding, but all damage could be repaired overnight. All right, so number 13, sharpshooters. From this position, sharpshooters fired on Federal ironclads during one of the naval assaults. So this says, construction of river to block the channel of the Ogeechee River. A double row of piling was placed across the river at a point opposite this marker. Well, that's a big cannon. So this says, position of the monitors. The monitors took positions against the far marsh in the direction of the Arrow between 900 and 1,200 yards from the fort during the following series of attacks by the Montauk, January 27th, February 1st, and February 28th, 1863, and by the Passaic, the Nanhat, and the Papisco, March 3rd, 1863. It's hot. Over this, that's 32 powder magazine. So this says 14 was Columbiad. The gun placement was one of the 4 positions of the original battery. Struck during multiple naval assaults, the gun was always fixed quickly for subsequent service. Take a picture of that too. It says Columbiad. This replica of a coast defense cannon known as the Columbiad was manufactured 1964 by Savannah Machine and Foundry Company as a public service. A similar cannon was positioned here during Union naval attacks 1863. The Columbiad fired 87-pound shells. Its range was 2,500 yards. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, that was number 14. It says Major Golly's gun. In this emplacement, chosen nearest the enemy, was the gun, an 8-inch Columbiad, command personally by Major John B. Galley. So it says Captain Nicholas Clinch. When called upon a Union officer to surrender during Sherman's assault, December 13, 1864, Clinch responded with a blow of his sword. After 3 saber, 6 bayonet, and 2 gunshot wounds, he was taken. So it says number 15 was powder magazine. This is a reconstruction of the service magazine, which held shells, powder, fuses, and implements for the 32-pound rifled gun. You can reach the location where the rifled gun would have been positioned by taking the short, thin trail to the immediate right of the powder magazine. I don't think that's going to happen. Not today. Because I'm about to roast. Oh, yeah. If you would like to take that trail, if you come here, there it is, right beside number 15. Hello. So this is number 16. This is the Eastern Bastion, and that was added and fortified with light field guns in January 1864 to protect against land assaults. So now we're at number 17, and that would have been the Sally Port. And the Sally Port allowed easy access for supply wagons and heavy guns to the interior of the fort, although it was filled with branches and brush to slow General Sherman's assault in December 1864. It was one of the first locations breached by federal forces. Says Confederate landmines. Landmines or torpedoes buried along the western approaches to the fort caused most of the casualties to the Union troops in their assault on December 13, 1864. After the taking of the fort, General Sherman personally gave orders that the captured Confederate garrison be required to remove the unexploded mines. So this is number 18 coming up. And 18 was the battlefield. And it says, this forested area was originally a large field and the site of General Hazen's frontal assault on the fort, in which several thousand men marched straight into Confederate fire. Mines placed in the field by Confederates inflicted heavy casualties on Federal troops. So this is Fort McAllister, the assault from the rear. December 1864, Fort McAllister, built 1861 to 62 to close the great Ogeechee River to enemy ships. Mounted 11 siege guns, 12 field pieces, and 1 10-inch mortar. Below it, piles and torpedoes obstructed the channel. As the Union forces neared Savannah, the fort's capture became imperative in order that ships could pass upriver to supply them. Naval attempts having failed, Brigadier General W.M. Hazen's Division 15 Corps was ordered to cross the river, move the fort, and take it from the rear. At dawn on the 13th, Hazen crossed at Kingsbridge, marched via Crossroads, Richmond Hill, and Bryan Neck Road, Georgia 63, arriving about noon. At 4:45, after a difficult deployment, he assaulted the fort. By 5 o'clock. His 3 brigadiers had swarmed over the works and overpowered individually Major George W. Anderson's small garrison of 230 Georgians, who fought gallantly to the end. General Sherman watched the assault from Dr. Chevis Rice Mill, 2.5 miles northwest across the river, after which he opened communications with Admiral Dahlgren's fleet waiting in Ossabaw Sound. Losses: 24 killed, 110 wounded, total 134. 14 killed, 21 wounded, 193 captured, total 230. So I guess since they got those little flags, that would be the Union and the Confederates. Right. So I only got 2 more stops, and then I am done with this. It is hot as everything out here. Should have wore shorts instead of capris, but that's not what I packed. I did have shorts on yesterday, thank goodness. And this is number 19. So this was mortar battery. This mortar battery was heavily used during the bombardment on February 1st, 1863, and caused the platform to collapse. Despite the damage, the Confederates continued to fire it for the duration of the bombardment. I sure hope this is the right way, because I'd be terribly upset if I got to turn back around. Well, there is an arrow, so let's hope it is. I see a red pole, so that means that is number 20 up there, which is the last stop. So number 20 says shoreline. During the final attack of General Sherman's troops in December 1864, several infantry regiments advanced along the shore of the river during ebb tide and attempted to scale the mounds under heavy fire. Troops in the 47th Ohio Regiment were the first to enter the fort and place their flag. And this says Fort McAllister, the naval bombardments on July 1st and 29th, 1862. The fort was shelled by Union gunboats, and on November 19th by the ironclad Wissahickon and 2 escort craft. Hit below the waterline, Wissahickon withdrew after firing 17 11-inch and 25 other shells. And I'll let you read the rest. Oh, that was an experience. hope there's someone you get back up there to get out of here. Beautiful. It's a pretty old tree. Pretty palmetto trees too. See the buildings up here at the front. So I decided to come look at this house before I leave. It's probably not open, but maybe I can see something. You can see anything in the windows. You can see a little bit. And they do have a beautiful flower garden over here. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So we're going to go ahead and end the video for Fort McAllister State Historic Site. That was our last state park that we were using to pass on that she bought last year. And that was the first one that said the card wasn't punched properly. Well, sorry, but nobody else had a problem with it. But anyway, we got to see it, we got to do it. I had a good time. Mom went to, what was stop number 2, and she turned around and she said it is too hot.
I mean,
she said something other than that, but
over 90 degrees and the heat index, and you feeling like you're melting.
It's still saying 93, but I think it's hotter than that.
The heat index,
So I thought about giving up a couple of times myself, but I persevered. So there's not too much I could say that I did not already say in the video, but here's a little bit of the history about it. It says, owned by the McAllister family before the Civil War, this site was part of an extensive rice plantation. Enslaved people who worked plantations along the coast were forced to construct Fort McAllister and made repairs to the fort during the war. 2 teams of 25 to 30 people began building the battery in June 1861. The first team dug soil from the moat and bluff, carried it in wicker baskets, and dumped it in wooden frames put into place to form the mounds. The second team came behind wooden pestles and compacted the soil into place. General Robert E. Lee, the commander of Confederate Department of South Carolina, Georgia, and East Florida, inspected the battery and made recommendations on strengthening the work. Lee's ideas, including the addition of river pylons, were implemented by McAllister's designer, Captain John McCready of the Confederate Engineers. Fort McAllister's earthen walls were well equipped to absorb the impact of the newer heavy artillery projectiles. And that's a picture of the troops whenever it was in use. And touch a little bit on this in there. But becoming a state historic site, in the 1930s, Henry Ford purchased the site and began extensive renovations. In 1958, the International Paper Company, which had purchased the property from Ford's estate, gave the site to the state. Under the supervision of the Georgia Historical Commission, the earthworks and bomb-proofs were restored to their 1863 appearance. In 1980, Fort McAllister Historic Site and Richmond Hill State Park became Fort McAllister State Park. So anyway, it's a beautiful park. I know it has a horrible history. Anytime there's any kind of war, it's not good. But the trees are pretty. That's back there. The trees might have been there whenever somewhat was going on, but I think it said they were not, because they would have been used, I think, to build the fort. That was one of the places I went. The trees were used to build the fort. It might have been the other one. But it was hot, and thankfully there was a lot of shade with the trees. The museum was very well done. We would have been in there probably several hours if we took time to read every single thing. So I just got an overview of it. Mom sat in the gift shop / museum while I was out there filming. I don't even know how long was I out there. Over an hour, I think. I should have a nice uneven tan since I got a tank top on today. So,
Oh, look at an alligator.
oh Lord, there's an alligator in the road. You don't see that every day. That's pretty cool.
That truck unmuted. Nope, he didn't. He scared him back across the road.
That was probably what, 2 or 3 years old?
Yeah, at the most.
Yeah, it wasn't a baby, but it certainly wasn't a big one. It was pretty cool. We got saw an alligator on the road since that day we were coming back.
From Charleston.
Yeah. One came
And he done the
running
same
across
thing.
the road.
Sit
for
right
us.
down in front of me.
Yep. So anyway, we just had a, what you say, whatever pops into your head moment. We got excited by the alligator. So anyway, that's gonna do it for this one. Hope you enjoyed.
And please subscribe.
Yes, we'll probably restart the Georgia State Park sometime next year once it cools down some. Once the winter sets in, then we might enjoy some of them more, because the last 2 days have been hot. So anyway, I did want to cover some of them, you know, and we've had a good experience at the whole thing, other than that couple of seconds whenever our card apparently was not punched correctly. But the park we bought it at
the next
is not a
stop sign,
historic site.
turn right.
They sold it. They said they really didn't know what to, so I guess next time we need to buy it at a historic site. We can go back there and buy it and make sure it's punched correctly. So anyway, that's it. We hope you have enjoyed our 2 days in Georgia, and we'll see you somewhere else. So toodaloo.
Bye.
Bye.